Hey guys, this is Paul. Got another video for you today of my 1/18 scale diecast collection, and since I've only done a couple of these videos so far, I figured for the next one we'd start really at the beginning for me and look at my 10 oldest model cars. And by oldest, I mean oldest in terms of the actual model itself, with the ones that I first got, not the model year of the actual car. And I didn't keep any detailed records at that time. These days I do. I have for a number of years now, but I believe these are my 10 oldest cars. And you know, I started collecting, I think it was right around Christmas time of 1992, and I'm pretty sure these were all available then. And we'll take a quick look at each car, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, you know, how I got it, who it's made by, and we'll definitely take a close look at them. I'll tell you right now, being that these models are approaching 30 years old, they are not going to be the cleanest or best conditioned models in my collection. A lot of them have little issues going on, and maybe today I find it kind of funny because they're so old, but for the most part they've aged pretty well. So we'll take a closer look. Okay, so here we are with what I believe was the first model car that I ever got, because I actually had just gotten my real life car, which was a 1970 Chevrolet Malibu. This is a 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle Super Sport. This particular one's the 454 LS6, and I was, you know, enamored with this car, this model, as soon as I saw it. It was not the exact same color as the one that I had. This one is blue with kind of a light blue with black interior, and my car was more of a dark blue with a blue interior. But it was very, very overall close, at least in terms of looks, if not performance. My car did not have a 454, unfortunately, but I really liked this model, and I actually remember seeing several other cars on the shelves, but this was the one that I had to get. I think I got it at Toys R Us because they actually carried them back in those days. And we'll take a little bit of a look at the interior here, keeping in mind this is not really clean. There's nearly 30 years of dust on this car. I did give it a quick wipe down, but on these old Ertl models, which is what this one is, the trunk did not open, but you could see under the hood. Be a little bit of a look at the LS6. It made, I think in real life, 450 horsepower. It was one of GM's first cars that made 1 horsepower per cubic inch. And it's definitely, you know, I haven't taken real good care of it. It's been, you know, uncovered the whole time I've had it. But this is a model that I cherish, and definitely an important part of my collection. I have another 1970 Chevelle that's primered, which is actually how the car was later when I owned it in real life. I tried to paint it and didn't do a very good job, so I stopped at the primer, and I'll show that car off another time. But this was Genesis for me in a lot of respects with my model car collection, and I really enjoy having it. I think it's still a very, very nice car. And continuing on with Chevys, this is a 1992 Corvette ZR1. And I remember there was a lot of this particular model around in the stores at that time. You could get them in a ton of different colors, which over the years I've accumulated nearly every color you could get on this car. But in real life, it was probably my favorite car at that time. I still aspire to own one. These cars in real life had, I think it was, well, at this time, 375 horsepower. Later, they made 405, but it was, for a Corvette, for any American car, that was a huge number, and very competitive in most respects with the European sports cars. And I've always liked the body style. I think it's really cool. The interior was redone at some point in the early 90s and really stepped up the car in a lot of ways. Sorry again, this one is so dusty. But it was definitely a big step up. They modernized it quite a bit, and I've always liked the lines of the C4 Corvette. The under hood on this car, they actually have a prop rod here. although I don't know if I'm going to be able to get it to work. It's pretty old. But the engine is the LT5, they called it. It was designed with the input of Lotus cars, and definitely, you know, 4-valve engine in a Corvette was unheard of up to that point. Really, it still is, and very, very fast car. One of these days I'll have one in real life. But in the meantime, this was the first one out of the probably nearly 20 C4 Corvette models that I have. Our next model is the 1957 Chevrolet Bel Air convertible. This one has the Continental kit in the back, although I think all these models did back then. This was one of those that they made in the stores by the thousands. But I remember seeing and thinking what a flashy car it was, and obviously a very iconic body style. And I've never really aspired to own one, but it's no collection is complete without one of these cars. The one thing I have to say is it's not aged particularly well in terms of, it's got a little bit of a lean going on here in the front left corner because the hub is broken. So that wheel, you can see a cap is missing there in the front left center wheel. So it's definitely had some wear over time. But the interior actually on this one has held up okay. It's a little bit dusty. But when they're convertibles like this, they're a little bit easier to clean anyway. So I was able to get in there, and the paint's holding up okay. The engine on this one has always been a little bit problematic because it's the fuel injected motor from back in the day, but it's always been a little bit loose, and it wants to kind of, I can't show you, but it definitely pops loose pretty easily. A lot of room up in front of the radiator there, but that's how they used to do it. So again, another car. Yeah, you can see the wheel just let go there. It's a nice looking car, a little worn out, but I leave it on the shelf most of the time. This thing's got the gangster lean going on, but it's a cool car anyway. So the Bel Air was not the only 1957 Chevy among my first cars. This is a 1957 Corvette, and I don't know offhand what motor was in this car. It says fuel injection, so maybe that was a 327. I'm not sure, but in any case, this car has a little bit more interesting story. One of my good high school friends, Jerry, at the time, he had a very small collection. I think it was only 4 or 5 cars that he had inherited, but he saw that I had a collection coming along and basically gave me his cars, and this was one of them. Not, this turquoise color is not one that I would have ever wanted in real life, but as a model it shows pretty well, and the paint has held up. However, this is not the actual original car that he gave me. It's identical to it, but the car he gave me was I think the only model car that I've ever bought that it got smashed. I think I stepped on it or something where it got really messed up, and I was sad to have to get rid of it, but I almost immediately because these are still available new in the box. They made so many of them all these years later. But this one is actually, of all these cars, might be in the best shape. It's pretty sturdy. I think this one was made by Barago, and it actually has a trunk that opens. That's one reason you know it's not an Ertl. And under hood, yeah, it's the fuel injected motor there. Looks a little different from that Ertl Bel Air, but it's a nice showing car, and beautiful body style back then, very iconic with the white coves, and definitely happy to still have this car after so long. And here is another car that I got from my friend Jerry. This, of course, is the old Mercedes Gullwing SL. Obviously beautiful car, very unique, especially in its day. Classic body style. I think this might have been the fastest car in the world at the time in terms of top speed. And the doors do open, but they won't stay open on their own. But you can see here that's what's meant by gull wing doors. The interior on this one, it's hard to clean inside of it, but for the most part it's held up pretty well. I always thought this would be a difficult car to get in and out of. And it does have a trunk. Not too much will fit aside from that spare tire. Full-size spare, of course. And then under the hood, straight inline 6-cylinder. And definitely a pretty car. And very sturdy. It's really old. I don't know how long Jerry had it before I got it, but it's definitely, you can see the wheels maybe have discolored slightly, but for the most part it's in very good shape still. Probably a 30-year-old car.